Minister, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. As Anne said, my name is Tommy Cooke and I'm the chairperson of the Board of Pobal. And on behalf of the Board, our CEO and our colleagues in the Department of Education and Science, I would like to thank you all for being here today. I would like also to extend a warm and hospitable welcome to you all to what I anticipate to be a very lively, engaging, thought-provoking and collegiate day of work, dialogue, reflection and exploration. I would like to do three things in my opening remarks this morning. One, briefly reference Pobal's work in the area of education and social inclusion. To also explain today's conference in the context of an EU project on lifelong learning that Pobal is involved in and that's coordinated by the EU DG for Education and Culture. And finally, to share with you some of our thinking about today's conference. Pobal's leading role in today's conference is derived from our cumulative experience in the areas of social inclusion, educational inclusion and local development. In relation to educational inclusion, Pobal's involvement goes way back to 1992, a time of recession and a time of formidable economic and social challenges. At that time, our work focused on adult and second chance education and was concerned with addressing poverty and long-term unemployment. Since 1992, Pobal's work has changed and evolved in response to changes in the economic, social and cultural environments and in relation to changes in mainstream policy priorities in the areas of disadvantage, social inclusion and equality. From 2001, in addition to our work in community development and in childcare, the labour market, Pobal has also been involved in supporting partnerships and community groups to deliver targeted local solutions to address issues of educational disadvantage, access and inclusion. The objective of this work has been to contribute to the realisation of improved educational outcomes for learners from disadvantaged communities in terms of the quality of their educational experiences, and also with regard to improvements in their educational retention, progression and attainments. As you might imagine, our experience over the years in implementing a range of social inclusion programmes in disadvantaged communities right across Ireland has resulted in some very solid learning and conclusions. Not necessarily all original, but nonetheless powerful, because they derived from the lived experience of our beneficiaries. One such conclusion that's now widely endorsed is the crucial contribution that education, in its broadest sense, can make in helping to build a more inclusive, equal and democratic society, and in breaking down the predictable patterns of intergenerational poverty and social exclusion, the script of which we are all too familiar with here today. This conclusion brings us to the strong belief that it is necessary to keep the educational inclusion agenda alive during this time of recession, and to work to safeguard the essential progress that was made, especially during the Celtic Tiger years, in addressing educational disadvantage. We all know that social background strongly affects participation and outcomes in education and engagement in lifelong learning opportunities from pre-primary right through to adult, further and higher education. We also know that the highest levels of early school leaving and the lowest levels of educational attainment are found among the most disadvantaged groups in our society, and that poor educational outcomes increase the likelihood of social exclusion later in life. In real terms, what does this really mean? Potentially and regretfully, it can mean a reduced quality of life, a preponderance to low levels of self-belief and self-esteem, unemployment, poverty, welfare dependency, literacy problems, mental health issues, substance misuse, criminality, limited choices, discrimination, and indeed marginalisation. It can also mean an alienation from the educational system, a lack of belief in the value of education, and a mistrust of the people and institutions that deliver education, all of which can be passed on to the next generation in a vicious cycle, and all of which makes the ambition of lifelong learning for all citizens a very challenging outcome to achieve in reality. Hopefully we will touch on some of these important issues in our deliberations here today. That brings me to the second thing I wish to do, which is to explain to you how today's conference fits into the EU lifelong learning project that Pobal is involved in. In 2009, Pobal received funding from the European Commission under its programme Raising Awareness of Lifelong Learning Strategies, Education and Training 2010, to undertake a project that focused on lifelong learning from a social inclusion perspective, drawing on Pobal's work indeed in that area. Speaking about the EU, I would like at this point to acknowledge the presence of Bernard Cabrera, Policy Officer with DG Education and Culture. You're most welcome, Bernhard. And I'd like to extend our appreciation to you for joining us here today to represent Gordon Clark, Head of the Unit with responsibility for the Raising Awareness programme. The EU programme is designed as an awareness-raising initiative and is underpinned by prescribed eligible activities in the form of networks, seminars and conferences. The overall aim of Pobal's project under this programme is to raise awareness of aspects of the Irish lifelong learning strategy through three basic mechanisms: engaging in discussion and dialogue through regional and national workshops, seminars and conferences on thematic areas of lifelong learning, highlighting the value of community-based approaches to widening educational access, and finally focusing on the social inclusion aspects of lifelong learning from an equality in participation education perspective. Pobal committed to achieve these objectives by hosting 2 practitioner-focused regional seminars and 1 national conference here today for a broader audience of policymakers, academics, directors and CEOs, and indeed practitioners. As you may already know, Ireland's National Lifelong Learning Strategy covers all phases of education, from early childhood care and education to primary and post-primary, further and indeed higher education and youth provision. To say that it spans a broad canvas would be an understatement. That's why, for the purposes of the regional seminars, and in order to engage in an in-depth exploration of the themes, Pobal decided to focus on just 2 thematic areas. One pertaining to community-based access to further and higher education, and the other focused on early childhood care and